Good afternoon and welcome. My name is John Coatsworth. I'm the Dean of the School of International and Public Affairs here at Columbia. And it's my pleasure today to introduce Marcelo Ebrard, who is the Mayor of Mexico City. I could begin with a boring biography of the mayor. You all know it, but I should, I think, start with some context. Mexico City is a megalopolis. The federal district includes about 9.2 million inhabitants, and it's surrounded by another 9 million. The government of Mexico City elected its first mayor. They were all appointed by the federal government in 1997. And Marcelo Ebrard is only the third elected mayor of the city. In the entire period of democratic elections in Mexico City, the government of the city has been controlled by one political party, the Partido de la Revolución Democrática, the PRD, and the national government has been controlled by a different political party. And so managing the city has become difficult because half of the city's revenues depend on money appropriated by the national government that is controlled by another party. Governing a megalopolis of nearly 20 million, or in the case of the federal district, 9.2 million, is no easy task, particularly in a period when revenues are constrained and when they come from a federal government that is not always sympathetic. So the city has been enormously benefited from the election of mayors of imagination and creativity, and in the case of Marcelo Ebrard, the city has been particularly lucky. Mr. Ebrard is a graduate of the Colegio de Mexico, where he received his bachelor's degree in international studies, practically a graduate of SIPA, or a kind of a branch of SIPA, if you will. Same quality, same kind of institution in Mexico City. And during the past 20 years has served in a series of important political positions in the public, in the civic administration of the city, and rose through the ranks because of his acknowledged competence and imagination. The city, under Mayor Ebrard's leadership, has not only tackled a series of very difficult issues: health, poverty, inequality of income distribution, an aging infrastructure, a subway system that is overcrowded and needs rapid expansion, and a crime rate that is going down but is much higher than the mayor and the citizens of the city would like. But in a period of constrained resources, Mexico City has also been able, under his leadership, to tackle a series of other problems which in a sense have improved the mood of the city and benefited many of its citizens at relatively low cost. For example, the mayor, Mayor Ebrard, once remarked that he would like Mexico City to become the most liberal city in Latin America. And this has occurred as a result of measures like decriminalizing abortion and legalizing gay civil unions, something that's remarkable in Latin America and in Latin American culture, but something that Mexico City has taken a leadership on. But perhaps the most imaginative thing, and what has increased the morale of the citizens of the city so enormously, have been a series of cultural events and spectacular happenings, the most significant of which perhaps was the construction in the Zócalo, the large downtown square in Mexico City, of the world's largest ice skating rink in December of 2007. It's 260 feet long and 131 feet wide. It will be reinstalled again this December. It was visited by 500,000 inhabitants of the city who had never ice skated before, and who found it was a kind of a cultural happening that brought the city together and, in a sense, in a very symbolic and important way, reduced the gap between those that can travel to the United States for skiing and ice skating and those that can't. And with other measures of this kind, Marcelo Ebrard has proved that you can change the mood of the city and govern, not only by doing public works, and by improving over time all of the city's social statistics, but by showing that governing also is an act of imagination. So it's a particular pleasure to welcome him to SIPA, where we have now currently 34 Mexican students enrolled, most of whom I think are, if you're from Mexico and you're a SIPA student, raise your hand. There we are. So you have a very sympathetic audience. SIPA has nearly 150 graduates living in Mexico City, all of them doing very good things. So it's a special pleasure to welcome Mayor Ebrard to SIPA and to Colombia.
It's truly an honor to be here with you at this historical law library of Columbia University. Before we begin, I would like to thank Dean John Cotsworth for his hospitality and say a special hello to the students from Mexico and Latin America. Thank you also to local congresswomen and congressmen for joining me today. I studied international relations in college, Colegio de México, so to be here in New York and Columbia University, it means a lot to me. Today, I would like to share with you some new ideas. I have thought a lot about how to move Mexico City towards a new direction, and I would like to discuss that with you. What we are essentially trying to do is to change the way that we see the future of the city and our city. Globally, we are already becoming more competitive, and locally, our citizens are living in a more equitable society. To continue to move forward, the city needs a new ideas, new model, new questions, new answers for our people in the future. It's not enough to think in the same way that 20 years ago, not only in the main problems of the city, but also how the people is living in the city and how can we improve the situation between our citizens in the short term. We are 9.2 million people, but we are lonely as never before. Now, it's the right time for new ideas. If you see the economic growth and social institutions buildings in Mexico from the 40s until the second half of the 70s, Mexico economic development was based on a strong state intervention and industrialization in the old-fashioned way. Our world was exceptional by the time. Between 1970s and 1980s, Mexico average growth rate was almost 6.9% per year. And from 1940s to 1980s, some of Mexico's most important social institutions and programs in healthcare, social security, transportation, education, science, and financial services were launched. After all of that growth came the 80s. The 80s is called the lost decade for Latin America, because during this time, so many countries experienced little or no growth. For Mexico, in the 80s, our average growth during the period was less than 2%. Then came the Washington Consensus, suggested we could start growing again with the implementation of a new economic model. We were told that moving government-owned companies into the private sector and opening ourselves up to more trade would be key. This new recipe, we were told, was going to solve the economic crisis of Mexico forever. The North American Free Trade Agreement, better known as NAFTA, would bring back economic growth and would encourage local and foreign investment in the production of goods, and Mexico's potential to be an export platform to the United States. But we soon found out that we were in Disneyland and it was only a fairy tale. The post-NAFTA evolution of the Mexican economy has not produced the expected results. Our economy has been relatively stable with low inflation, low budget deficit, and a surge in non-oil export. That's true. But we have not seen an expansion of economic activity growth and employment. Why? What we have seen instead is economic stagnation. Mexico growth is insufficient. NAFTA results in mostly low-value jobs, those focused on the maquiladora sector or factories. And now, even some of these jobs have been lost because foreign enterprises and industries have found cheaper labor in other places. We have also had a knowledge stagnation. Maybe this is the key of the issue. In the 90s, the number of patents registered in Mexico was 132. 1990. 70 years later, in 2007, the number of patents registered in Mexico was 190. This means that in almost 20 years, we are not able to even double the number of registered patents, which, as you know, is one of the measures of the development of one country. In my opinion, this stagnation of growth in the past 20 years proves the failure of the current economic model. I mean, in the last 2 decades, the same solutions have been tried over and over again. It's like a mouse in a wheel, running and not getting anywhere. Our policies have been exactly like this, moving around in endless circles, not taking the country anywhere. Well, what about Mexico City? Despite this economic and knowledge stagnation, Mexico City remains the leading city in Mexico and a leader in the world as well. Mexico City is one of the most important cities in the world, the second largest population, the 8th richest city, an economy larger than that of Chile or Colombia. Moreover, Mexico City has 80% of all the scientific research and the very best universities in the country. There is no other city in Mexico that has comparable economic resources and human capital. And human capital is key. I believe that Mexico City has the talent and resources it needs to generate the creativity, produce the knowledge, and develop the technology that will create the wealth and equity our people deserve in the future. So we have in Mexico City a need for change also. What we need are new ideas to move us forward. There is no doubt that we are all in a financial crisis. For Mexico City, this means lower oil prices, less liquidity, and less available investment dollars. So what's the panacea or magic answer going to be this time? What will be the silver bullet that will solve everything? Before it was NAFTA, and lately it has been oil revenues. But as Mexico City looks towards a new direction, we need to stop thinking in the short term and in the old-fashioned issues, or in the looking for a panacea again. We need real changes. Change in our relationship with the United States, change in the model for the city, how to think the future of our economy, and change for the people living in Mexico City. Let me say, change in our relationship with the United States. What I'm talking about. A new treaty, a new strategy, what's the idea? Well, with the United States, I think there needs to be discussions about Mexico that are not just about immigration or narcotics, as used to be past years. Let's talk about growth, about investment in science and technology, about knowledge, creation, partnerships. North America, the North American cluster, if we look at it globally, is losing its competitive edge. We need to work more closely together in the next years. A year ago, nobody thought we are going to be in this financial situation, but also a year ago, nobody thought that Senator Obama will be the next US president. I had to tell you, I like the hope and change that the new president-elect spoke about during his campaign. This is also what we need in Mexico, hope and change, and new ideas. Why not? Changing the model for the city. Let me speak first about the new model for the city. What I envision for Mexico City is integration. I'm speaking here about integration in a way that is a little different than you might be used to. So let me explain a little bit. We need to integrate the upper income population with the middle and lower income populations. We have a city divided by income. Our society and our economy is currently one that operates on many different levels. It's unequal, and our people seek more equity. That's why it's so important to improve public transportation facilities, access to quality universities and education, and also public space, quality of the public space in the city. To further integration, we can create public spaces for people, including the ice ring in downtown area, but also a lot of initiatives about cultural life in the city. Theater, the Philharmonic Orchestra, movies, cultural life, and access to the cultural life in the city, public events for people to engage with each other, and public transportations, then also bike in the main avenues of the city, and new ways to interact with other people. One of the most important things that bring us together as a city is our future. So let's do it together. What a new model for the people. We should focus on our people. That means a lot of money and efforts in the educational system in the city, because we don't have time to lose. That means health care in another kind of quality and coverage. In educational issues, we are supporting right now 180,000 students in high schools. In the first year, we are putting money in a scholarship program. In 2007, and in 1 year, we have an improvement, a very important improvement in the average of high school students. And we have a lot of people, a decline in the high school dropout rate since we started. Just in a year, the dropout rate declined from 18% to 6%, just in a year. And the young people improved their qualifications. They has risen almost 1 point in 1 year, from 7.2 to 8.3. So it makes sense. It's the most important investment that we should really care. Environment, security, also are important matters in the city. But I say we can spend a lot of money in new policemen, new equipment, but if we don't change the integration situation of our society, we are not going to solve the security issue. We have 65% of the people in jail below 25 years. So it doesn't make sense to put a lot of young people in the jail instead of support people in the educational system. Why is so important in Mexico, this discussion? Because we are losing time. We should put a lot of money. We can do it in the educational front. And to be sure that the people is going to be in the school until they finish their studies and not leave the school because of economic reasons. So in this program, in 1 year, we have results that prove that this way of thinking is correct, I think. Okay, we are working on bicycles. You know that only 1% of the people in the city use bicycle. Why? Because we have fears about the streets, because we don't respect other people, because we forgot how to convive with, to exist in the city with other people. We distrust other people, the different people. We are losing the community idea of our life. We have a huge amount of people, and nobody talks with the neighbor in the city. So we should take actions in order to change this situation. That's why it's important, the bicycle strategy, the public transportation new systems, buses, and other initiatives, which are important also for the ecological situation of the city. And also, we are in a program in order to change the old taxis and old cars in the city with the support of the financial system and the government. We are promoting new business models, mainly in the most important or the areas, sectors of the economy in which the city has advantages. For instance, biomedical sector of the economy, which is one of the most important in the city. So we have put a lot of attention to this, putting together national universities with private sectors and public officials for the first time. Because usually, everyone has his perfect world. Nobody talks with the other. The private sector prefers to import technology every time, cheaper and faster. The universities are mainly looking for scientific advantages, findings, important findings, and the public sector is in another place. So we are here taking everyone together in order to discuss what to do and to share the agenda, the technological and economic agenda of the city for the future. So those are the main initiatives that we are putting in practice. We think the future of the city in our way. I think that the most important thing in the first place is to change our way, our living way in the city, I can say. Maybe the most important thing. Secondly, to really put attention in scientific and technological advances in the city. If we, in 10 years, have 190 patents in Mexico, we're going to be a poorest country. Because now we are having a lot of money from oil. But what about in 20 years, 25 years? How is Mexico to really have a huge amount of money and revenue for the country without technological advances. It's just impossible. This is the key issue. It's always in the last priority, in the budget, in the strategy of the country. We are discussing again oil, okay, and other issues. What about science and technology? It seems that nobody cares, but it's the key issue for the next years. So that's why it's so important to have a closest relationship with universities in the United States and other parts of the world, and that's why I'm here. And thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open to your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
I should have said at the beginning, this is a first in a series of visits by mayors of major cities in the world, and we hope that you'll come back and that we succeed in attracting to the university people who have as much to say and as thoughtfully as the mayor of Mexico City, who's now happy to respond to questions. If you have a question, it would be helpful if you would go to the microphone in the center aisle, state your name, and try and make your question as a question and as brief as possible. Professor de la Garza.
Rodolfo de la Garza, professor here at CIPA. It has been said and documented that following the last election, the PRD and the PAN have completely severed relations to the point that your party refuses to recognize the President of Mexico as the authentic representation of the people. An election no more contested than was the Gore-Bush election of 2000. Here, however much people may think that election was stolen, the Democrats acknowledge the presidency of Bush and have cooperated, more or less. There are
some Democrats.
Most Democrats, how about that? The party. In Mexico, there are instances where your office, for example, which is in Mexico City, has refused to acknowledge the president in a public way, has refused to deal, according to public reports, with the president of Mexico as the legitimate national authority. If you plan to do the kind of changes you plan, you describe, you hope for, how can that be done in the kind of political environment that the PRD refuses to recognize, however contested it was, the election of the current president of Mexico?
Easy question. Let me try to explain, because a very good question. Well, when we took office in 2006, we said, okay, we are going to have something like a pacific coexistence with the federal government. We don't accept the results of the election as it was in 2006. But we should cooperate with the federal institutions. So we developed a strategy which is in all kind of institutional relationship with federal government. We try to find cooperation ways and not to scale the conflicts. In the political arena, we are a distant neighbor for the federal government, just remaining that something should be done in the next future in order to avoid in Mexico another 2006 election. That's it, the policy that we are following. So Mexico City has the autonomy to put in practice a change program like the change that I told you several minutes ago. And we find respect from the federal government. We don't have in this moment very high conflict issues with the federal government. We are cooperating in security issues and in all kind of things. So we are going to maintain the same position for the next years.
I'm Lizeth Pineda. I'm exchange student in CIPA. Originally, I'm studying a Master in Public Policy in the Centro de Investigación y Docencia Económica, CIDE. And I would like to know what lessons do you think that New York City Mayor Bloomberg could learn from Mexico City regarding with urban policy, if you have any suggestions to the Mayor of New York City?
Suggestion to the Mayor of New York City? I don't know. You know, we used to be in touch with New York government since several years ago. We have, I think, a close relationship in several fields, issues. For instance, obviously, safety issues. Recently, the initiative of the Mayor Bloomberg in order to have 15 cities all over the world in order to have a common plan about climate change. So we are very close to New York, but the situation in Mexico City and New York are very different. So I don't have really any suggestion to do, but to improve our relationship in the future, as we tried in the past few years.
When we were discussing earlier, it turns out that the budget of the City of Mexico, or the federal district, which includes the 9.2 million inhabitants that Mayor Ebrard is in charge of, the total budget is about $10 billion. The total budget of New York City, which is slightly smaller, is $60 billion. So perhaps there are some lessons in economy that you could, especially now, that you could pass on.
I'm sure.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Ariana Ortiz. I'm a CIPA student and a Master in Public Administration student here in Colombia, and I thank you for coming here. My question is related to specific policies addressing security issues in Mexico City. You talked about the importance of education and tackling education, but I think organized crime has pretty much people that have reached higher degrees of education are still organized crime, and I don't think more education will hinder them, will divert organized crime. So I want to know what specific policies is the Mexico City government doing to collaborate with Presidente Felipe Calderón in addressing specifically kidnaps. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Well, we have a strategy like this in Mexico City. I can say you have three points to attend simultaneously. There are no policy with just one area to work on. Let me try to explain. The first part, you have the improvement in the police force. We are putting a lot of young people inside the police in Mexico City. As a matter of fact, we have 10,000 young people with high school studies in the policy of the city the past 3 years. We are putting a lot of money, new housing programs, in order to have a professional police as soon as we can. This is one area. The other area is about the effective countermeasures against organized crime, kidnappers and all kind of things. As a matter of fact, Mexico City has captured this year all the kidnappers in the city, included Martí case and all cases. This is the high priority of the city in order to have 90% or something like that cases solved when we have the information. Okay. And the other part is to the issue of integration, because what's happening in the city? The narcotics distribution is growing very fast in the city and in the country. The addiction rate is growing more than expected. So it's a very good business. So who is going to be enrolled in order to make the distribution, then the gun market, then maybe all kind of crimes? Who? Young people outside the educational system. We have in Mexico City 110,000 young people outside the educational system. That's why it's so important to put money there and attention. So we are working the three fields at the same time. And about the cooperation with the federal government in this matter, in safety issues, I can say that it's very good cooperation. We are putting all the information in their hands, and they are doing the same thing. For instance, arms, guns in Mexico City. Last year, we found 2 anti-tanks guns from the United States inside the city. They were waiting for use those kinds of war arms against, I don't know, maybe against installations in the city or something like that. So we are working together with the military, the General Attorney Office, and all intelligence and security systems in national level at the time. Okay?
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Ernesto Castañeda. I'm a PhD student here at Columbia. And I want to applaud you, first of all, for your concern about integrating different socioeconomic groups in Mexico City. I think that's a big issue. But I think it will be interesting for the group here to know how you are planning to actually do that. Especially, it seems to me that you have the model of the city of Paris in mind with the ice rink, the bicycles, which has some good public policies, but also, as Professor was saying, the tax incentives or the tax structure of Paris is very different, have much more resources. And and I know you have experiences living in Paris and Sciences Po, but I'll be worried to try to implement the Paris model if that's implicitly or maybe unconsciously part of the model you're trying to do in Mexico City, because it is not even working in Paris itself. As you know, there's a lot of inequality with people living in the banlieues and the outside of Paris, how we see right now with Nezahualcóyotl, for example, and Mexico City. So I wonder how you're going to be able to copy the good things from Paris or other global cities like New York, while actually making it work in the Mexico City context. Thank you.
Well, really, I love Paris, yeah. But I was there in the 80s. I was a student there. But it's not the idea is not to implement in Mexico something like Paris or, I don't know, Barcelona, for instance, which is another lovely European city. But you need two things at the same time when you govern a city as Mexico City with 9 million people. In one part, of the most important one, is your measures or your decisions, your projects, which are really important in the middle term, as the public transportation facilities, for instance. You know, we have, in Mexico, we have 200 kilometers of subway, and we are building right now 200 kilometers of bus system, like Metrobús and Insurgentes. Okay. So these kind of things really counts in the future. But at the same time, you need symbols to communicate to the society what are you trying to do. So if I have a very nice speech about public spaces all over the world, maybe the major part of the city is not going to understand really what I am talking about in terms of daily life. So I think that the most important thing is we should change the way the space public is in Mexico City and how the society is living together, let me say in these terms. So if you take a look about the 80s to this point, the society in the city divided, and the community sense of the city decreased, mainly because of safety issues, but also because social issues. So we really are trying to change this trend. It's not the idea to make Mexico, Paris in Mexico, maybe in some part. But it's not the idea to copy the model of Paris or maybe some kind of things from New York or Copenhagen, which is a very little city compared with Mexico City, or Bogota in South America, or Curitiba in Brazil. But the main idea is how to reorganize the public space in the city and the daily living way of the city. So we are taking ideas from several cities or trying to introduce new ideas for ourselves in the city. Okay.
Hello, my name is Elia. I'm a first-year MPA from CIPA. My question is, as you said, 80% of the most important educational institutions are located in the city. And as we know, UNAM is one of the most important ones. Actually, yeah, the best one of the city.
Yeah.
And a proof of this is that we have a Nobel Prize that studied at UNAM, the chemistry one. But as we know, he developed his main research overseas.
Outside.
So what kind of policies do you have to prevent good human capital to develop the research overseas and not inside Mexico City, inside Mexico?
Very good question.
For those that don't know, UNAM is the acronym of the National Autonomous University of Mexico.
Yeah. Well, we are, in the first place, we organize a discussion with national university and other institutions, public mainly, but also private institutions, in order to share a technological and scientific agenda for the city in the next decade. It's the first time that we really meet all over private sector and public sector in order to have the same agenda. What are going to need the city in the next 10 years? Well, the second question is sharing with national university and other institutions. Okay, who is working on what? Linked to the agenda of the city. For instance, waste management, water treatment, new energy options to the city for the next years, hybrid systems, a lot of things. So we have the names of the teams in each university working on those kind of things. So the next step is we have our Science and Technology Institute in Mexico City. The next year we are going to put money in order to support the teams that are working in the universities and to put money in the innovation processes, which is the thing that really counts. What's the next step? To convince private sector in Mexico, which are great corporations mainly, unfortunately. We don't have enough middle enterprises in the innovation field, but we are going to do a lot of efforts next year in order to improve this. But now, with the great corporations that we have, are working together in order to have a common approach to this agenda. Let me give you an example. We are going to put in all the educational system in Mexico City next year digital facilities. We don't have it right now. Primary schools, they have internet in 10%, which is incredible. We are going to put 100%. Okay. Secondary schools is the same thing. Computers, laptops. So we made a question. what kind of facilities do we have in Mexico City in order to produce the software that we are going to use next year, and computers. And we find that we have only 12 enterprises or teams working on software. So we are going to put the contract in their hands in order to produce a software that should be used in Latin America in 2009 and 2010, all over Latin America, because we are going to develop a software in Spanish and cultural Hispanic idea. So we are doing this. The second question was, we don't have any facility in the city which produce any kind of computer system, because we are importing everything from Taiwan. We put a, a symbol there then when they arrive to Mexico City. So we are going to put the first facility next year with the Mexican enterprises and some support from universities. So those kind of things we are working on. And the final one, we are asking for the support of the Academy of Science of New York and other institutions in the United States in order to have a more important effort to put in Mexico specialists, scientists, and important people from the United States invited to Mexico, as in El Colegio de Mexico used to be when I was a student. We have several professors from Colombia or several institutions from the United States. But in some way, in the late 80s, this kind of practice was stopped. So now we are trying to reopen these practices in 2009.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Oscar Pineda. I am a PhD student here at Columbia University at the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology program. And my question is related, I am interested in this discussion about how, and it's very interesting your idea about how to link the government with the scientific development in the city. And basically I have one specific question. What's the budget that the Mexico City government is advocating for this? And what's the proportion in the general budget of the Mexico City? And there are two topics that I think they are crucial in terms of the economic development and in the environmental impacts of the city and in the whole world. That is energetics and water. There are several, you have talked now about some technological developments, but there are measurements that can be taken at the level of the education, at the level of the scientific development, at the level of economic incentives. What are the priorities for the Mexican government? Is there any specific area that the Mexican government is trying to focus? It's in education, it's in development, because that's at the end the ones that is dictating the policy, the public policy for the Mexican government, and how that's going to be trying to deal with the long term, because these are not short-term problems. These are going to be long-term problems, and we have in Mexico the problems with the government that every time that the government changes, everything changes, and that's a very huge issue for trying to develop long-term alternatives for the Mexican development. And thank you very much for coming.
No, thank you. Well, let me say something about this. 2 years ago, we don't have in Mexico City any kind of institution inside the government dealing with those kind of team. I mean, we don't have education department because it used to be national or federal. We don't have a local institution about science and technology. So the first step was to change this. Now we have education department, and we have our local Institute of Science and Technology. Secondly, we don't have by the time a specific budget to the scientific and technological development of the city 2 years ago. Now we have something like $50 million. Next year we are going to put more money in order to have more and more resources to the scientific and technological front. What are our priorities right now? Well, first of all, education system. We are putting all kind of facilities in the educational system, the public one, money, digital services, connectivity, all kinds of things, which is because it's the most important part of the strategy for really have a knowledge city in the future. So our average of education level in the city, it's 9 years. We are looking 12 years in the next 6 years. And we are also putting a lot of efforts and money in order to really have technological development in the city. So if we have 190 patents in the country, we can produce in the city twice this figure in the next 3 or 4 years. This is the main task. So I invited the director of our local institute, which is Dr. Esther Orozco, which is here. Maybe if you want to have more information and notice about the efforts of the city, we are going to be delighted to send to you the information and to give you the information right now about this. Okay? Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I think we have time for only one more question.
Okay.
And I see 4 people in line. So if you can be very brief, why don't you all 4 ask a very short question, and then we'll see if the mayor can manage to answer all of them before we're finished.
Actually,
please.
Hi, I'm Jaime Fasja. I'm a Columbia Business School student on the MBA program. I have 2 quick questions. The first one is, you talked about several problems in the city, but you didn't talk about one of the problems that I think is the most important one, that it's the water shortage on the city. How are you approaching the water problem in the city? And the second one is, as the dean said, we have the federal government with one party, then the city with another party, and if you add to that equation the state of Mexico government with a third party, how are you managing when you have conflicts where the state and the city are involved? For example, Hueyatlaco, where things usually get stuck there, and there is no much movement when there are the state and the city involved in the same issue.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pablo Salazar. I'm an MPA student concentrating in urban policy. Aside from the water problem, I'd like to know what are the main issues of metropolitan coordination you have, and if you see any institutional alternative, like creating any metropolitan government agency to address them.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anna Fink. I'm a program officer at the New World Foundation, and my question is about civil society. You mentioned a lot about partnerships with business and academic institutions, and I'm wondering what you see as the role of civil society in the Mexico City.
3 questioners and 4 questions.
Okay.
And
easy task.
And 1 minute.
1 minute to respond. Okay, let me say a metropolitan government, I don't think it's a good idea because it's going to be a lot of opposition to this as a government. We founded more than 10 years ago the first agencies, metropolitan agencies, without putting political issues there, but technical ones. So we have right now a very good coordination in what? For instance, ecological or environmental measures is working on. The water system of the city, which is one of the most complex in all over the world. So we are leading with Mexico State several decisions about the water system of all the Mexico, the Valle de Mexico. So it's going to work if you put outside the political issue, which means the sovereignty issue for the state of Mexico and our city, because nobody wants to leave political power in a non-elected agency. Okay? So the other one, the civil society. Well, we are working a lot with civil society in human rights front. We prepared the first diagnosis in all over Mexico about the state of human rights in the city with 400 ONGs, another civil society organizations. And we are working with them also in the green issue, which is another very important one. And not always it's easy to do it because the ONGs have different approaches. Several times you don't reach an agreement about the different approaches, but the important thing is the process to take decisions. If we have a diagnosis and program on human rights with 400 ONGs organization, it counts very much for the future of the city. And we are going to try to do the same thing in the green issue. A lot of civil society organizations help and support us past year in the green consultation in the city. We had something like 1,200,000 people voting about green issues in the city. So we are working together as far as we can do it. And about the government of the Valle de Mexico with 3 parties and 2 different levels of government, you can use it also in benefit of the city. Because we have several competition between the federal government and our neighborhood. So we are trying to be smart in the play. And for instance, in the last budget decisions, which finished a week ago, we won for the city money for the subway in the first time in 10 years. But the federal Congress say, okay, they had the reason to ask for money for the subway. And so several times we can use the differences and the check and balance, the Mexican way, in order to protect our city. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.